welcome, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages, to the last episode of the Halloween special that we have this month. Again, if this is a hit, then we may do it for Christmas time in December. You just never know. Obviously, won't do it for Thanksgiving because there's really only one Thanksgiving thing as far as entertainment goes, and that is a Charlie Brown. Yep, that's really the only thing. But if this is a hit, then we'll definitely do it for Christmas for sure.
Sorry, I got another one. The Addams Family. The Thanksgiving scene in the Addams Family.
Oh, that is Thanksgiving, isn't it?
There it is.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So, of course, if this is a big hit, we'll definitely do this for Christmas time period. Just let us know in the comments, or if we see an influx of views, we'll definitely do it. But in the meantime, of course, we'd like to thank you guys for checking us out, as well as be sure to follow us on all social platforms. In addition to that, I'd like to thank Kevin Holmes, who's done the intro and outro and many of the graphic elements. Justin Dye, AKAs to Stars Return. Go ahead and check him on Bandcamp. And he's done many of the musical elements. As far as research goes, I did this month's research because I kind of knew exactly the direction that we wanted to go. Other than that, of course, we have Kevin over here, who's done research as well for us in the past. And Kevin, how you doing?
I'm here and I'm ready to talk about some scary movies, and a couple that one that I've never seen, two that I've never seen, one I'm really interested in seeing.
Okay, perfect.
Really excited about it.
And with that, and to continue what we've been doing throughout the week, so we'll go ahead and start off with our personal scary experiences, whether if it's paranormal, ghostly wise. So again, we'll start off with Kevin. So Kevin, take away.
Okay. So this is from last week's episode about the Mouse Cemetery and everything like that. So I have this core group of friends when I was from probably the age of 17 to about 23, 24 or whatever. And so there was this house in the middle of Muskegon, Michigan, where I grew up, where friends, or the family of a lot of these friends, they lived together in this huge house, 3 stories, full basement, the whole works. Very creepy house, but like it was the house that we all went to. And there was a lot of stories that would go around about this house being haunted, or like the devil and that kind of stuff going around. And so we'd sit there and we would make up our own stories about like, oh, this probably happened or this probably happened. Well, one night we're sitting there messing around, probably having a couple of beers, and all of a sudden we always talked about this attic. There's this attic on the 3rd story, so we would hang out in this kind of a lounge area on the 3rd story, and there was this attic down the hallway that nobody ever went into. No, not one person ever opened this little it was like I would say like a 3x3 opening to get up into this attic. Nobody ever opened it up because we didn't want to know. We always speculated of what could or couldn't be in there. We didn't mess with it. We don't mess with devil stuff. We don't want nothing to do with it. Because one of our friends' wives was like this Wiccan, essentially. That's what she was. And she told us some shit, and we like, hey, don't bring that stuff around us. We don't want nothing to do with it. So one night we're like hearing some odd noises in the house, which was usual because the house was just kind of old and creaking all over the place. And there was 2 of us that went down the hallway, and and I can't make this up. I know it sounds like I'm making it up. There was a glow coming from the attic. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Do you have a light up there? What? I don't know. No one ever knew about anything of a light being up there because nobody had ever been up there. But I know that it's dark and there's an underglow coming through the creases of the like 3x3 block that was up there. And I was like, okay, so I'm going downstairs and I'm not going to mess with this. We all go to bed that night, and I have a terrifying dream. I'm in this house, the house that I'm in my dream, and there are demons, there are Beelzebub, and they're all trying to get into the house. But the only way for them to get into the house is if we let them in, right? Like that's kind of how that works. You got to let the demon into your domicile, right? And he's crawling around, trying to get in, trying to coerce me into letting him in, so on and so forth. I'm like, I'm not happening. I woke up sweating. It was in Michigan. It snows outside in Michigan. That's the way it is. And that's going to come into play in the story later. I get up. I tell my buddy Chris, I'm like, Chris, man, let me tell you, I had the worst night's sleep last night and I had this terrible dream. So I started explaining the dream to him. The further I got into the dream, the more you could see he started becoming pale and he started like sweating and his eyes were big and he were super dilated. And I'm like, dude, what the hell's wrong with you? He had the exact same dream that I just had.
Oh, nope.
He let the demon in though.
Nope.
Yeah, he let the demon in. We went outside. There are these large bat-like footprints in the snow all around the house. I never stood foot in that house ever again after that day.
Nope. Fuck that. I'm out.
I don't care. I haven't seen him in years. He could be dead. And honestly, that's okay. That's okay. I don't need to know. I don't want he let him into his house. I didn't let him in. I was brave, Todd. I was brave. He let him in. But he was pale. Absolutely stark white when I was telling him the story.
Yeah, no, I'm getting goosebumps.
Oh, dude, my hair is standing on end right now because that shit is real. That creeped me out so much. Oh God. Yeah. So yeah, man. He sold his soul to the devil, I guess. I don't know. That's not my problem anymore. It's not my problem anymore.
Is that house still standing?
It was condemned last I knew. I think it got raised. I believe last I know. In fact, I'll have to do some research on that for myself because now, oh man, I have the chills. Oh my God. I do. I really do. It's creepy. Whew. It's cold. It's like 80 degrees in here and I'm shivering right now.
Yeah, no, I'm out.
I don't like that story. That story really bothers me. Really, that one's the worst. That one creeps me out.
Yeah, no, I'm out. No.
At least I didn't call my name. Todd.
Oh.
I'm gonna have nightmares tonight. I'm gonna have nightmares tonight now.
I guess the reason why it's like that gave me chills a little bit is it's because something that I could see happening.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, lucid dreams, because that actually plays a little bit into my story. Which I don't know how the hell that happens. You go tell like a dream story, and my story is about a dream.
This is all random, folks. We did not talk about this beforehand.
No. So, yeah. So you haven't spoken to that friend. You don't know anything about the house.
Nope.
So as of right now, that is basically where the story ends.
It is for now.
Okay.
That's the problem. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Like, when is he going to cash in on me? That's the question. That's what I need to know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So like we were friends for a while, but then like we kind of fallen apart and like I have no idea what happened to him since. But I just know that we had the same dream. And then it got real weird. And then there's these footprints outside of the house. When I was telling you, they were outside of the house walking around trying to get in, but you had to let him in. And I didn't let him in, and he let him in. So he's dead. That's my best guess. He's dead now. He sold his soul to Satan.
I'm out. All right. So I think out of the creepiest stories, you won this one. Because my story kind of sets up, because obviously we know the stories that had happened in Dwajak. Of course, there may be a few others that kind of escape my mind. I don't know. Because of course there are situations like we had a house alarm, and out of nowhere in the middle of the night, even during winter, the alarm would go off. no look at breaking in, nothing. The alarm would just go off, to the point where, our dogs were outside. And back in that time, it was more common to have dogs as outside dogs than anything else. Obviously, all of our dogs now are inside. So when we had our dogs inside, like in the garage and stuff like that, my dad was a construction worker. He had like one of those heavy duty heaters where it was like very circular. You plug it in and it could easily get over 100 degrees.
Oh, like a torpedo heater?
Yes,
Yeah,
actually, yes.
yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So we would bring the dogs into the garage. He would have that heater going, jack it up to like 80 degrees or so to keep the dogs warm. And I remember vigorously one night that the alarm went off, no reason, no nothing. And he went down because my dad is a hunter. So he grabbed his defense weaponry, as we'll say here. He went down to the basement, checked all the doors, checked everything, nothing. The door was still locked. But both dogs outside in the garage were barking vigorously. Now, these dogs were golden retrievers, but they're barking vigorously, angry, snarling. Even to this day,
uncharacteristic of the breed.
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have no idea what it was. So that basically everybody knows about that story. Now we're jumping to Florida now. Now we went from Florida because I graduated in 08, moved down in 08. My mom and sister moved down in 09. We lived in a house off of Duff Road in Lakeland, Florida. And I was seeing a girl, of course, and during her college program with Disney. And unfortunately, it was my only experience with bed bugs.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
Because she lived in Vista Way, and if you know anything about Vista Way, it's not the individual as it is the location itself. It's just a very dirty location with rundown apartments, everything like that. So it wasn't her; it was the location. So I ended up having bed bugs. It was not fun at all because it's bed bugs. To the point where I would wake up and it looks like welts were on my back, and it's because of the bed bugs. Now, I always chalked it up to the bed bugs, but apparently I was sleeping in. I had the covers off of me. My mom or my sister came into the room and they noticed scratches, like deep, heavy scratches, multiple scratches on my back. Don't know where it came from. I said it was because of the bed bugs. Maybe I scratched myself, being more of a logical thinker. But they said no. This was before the bed bug situation. So within timeline, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but that always stuck with me. The other thing, and this is also going from the house in Dowagiac, is even the house down in Florida. And even once in a while, like it'll seem like a dark figure would run across, or a dark figure would run to the next room. In the corner of your eye. You would never see it like straight up, like how I'm looking at you. It would be in the corner of your eye every single time. And, every once in a while, it does happen from time to time, even till this day.
To you right now? Todd, I've shook your hand. I have had dinner with your family. You don't tell me this shit until just now.
But I chalk it up to the point of the fact that, that stuff has technically stopped since moving out of my mom's place. So I chalked it up to like now it's just lighting and stuff like that. Because, I work on the second floor, the computer is facing the door and we have curtains and the doorway faces directly into our room. So I chalk it up to like the lighting and stuff like that. But that house specifically, of course, everybody's had lucid dreaming before, like what you just shared. Mine I've dealt with lucid dreaming that had to do with paralysis a few times.
Okay.
This one dealt with paralysis, but also, okay, have you seen the Conjuring 2?
Yeah.
So the Crooked Man.
Yep.
So the story of the Crooked Man. Do you know the story of the Crooked Man?
I do know the story. Yes, I couldn't tell it back to you, but I know what it is. Yes.
Do you know the horror aspect of it, the entity?
Beyond what they should. No, I do not.
So basically, they call it the Top Hat Man or whatever. I'm not quite sure, but
Okay. Yep.
he's just like in the movie, but except that he's all in black. You can't see who it is or what he is, and that's exactly what it was. It was lucid dreaming, paralysis, and a like tall, dark, strangly figure going from room to room. Now, if I can set you up with this, picture your bed in front of the door entry to your room. Okay. Now, picture your sister's room literally right next to you, where if you walk out of your door, the door to her room is right there to your right. The bathroom is literally right there to your left. Okay. You would have the kitchen and living room, and then right across the hall is the entryway to your mom's room. That's how the house is set up. So during this paralysis, during dreaming, lucid dreaming, could never see the figure, except that it was dark, strangly, and extremely tall, like pencil thin tall. And he would go from, it never entered my room for some reason, but it went from my mom's room to my sister's room to the kitchen to my sister's room to my mom's room, and it just kept that whole
like a loop
every single time. And all you would hear was mom,
oh no,
mom, and the other thing you'd hear is I'm coming, and just going through that loop, and you'd still hear mom, and you would hear that loop over and over and over again. Yeah.
And now you're seeing it in your house now.
Not that specifically.
But paranormal activity has taught me anything, is that it's not the house, it's the person that it attaches to.
Right.
You're the person. You.
Yeah. So I mean, that's really my story, my experience.
That's creepy to me too, though. I don't like dream stories, and then they feel real, and then they can be real. I don't.
Yeah, and the scary thing is the fact that I can tell stories of situations that I've experienced, but my family members can tell different stories of what they've experienced, what they saw. And I think that's one of the most difficult things, is because like you could sit here and we could tell the stories of what we personally have done, right? But when it comes to these types of stories, number one, audience, okay, who else has experienced the same thing? Number two, what kind of stories do they have but fits in the same location? For example, your cemetery story from last week. Other people have experienced identical situations to what you've experienced.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So it's a different situation, but same story.
Oh, you're talking about with the animals and stuff? No, yeah, that's all happened. Yeah, I got you.
And it's at that point, it's like, okay, how much of it is actually believable? Because it's how many strangers actually come up with the same story over and over again.
Unless they're all piggybacking off of each other. Yes, I hear. I understand though. Yeah, I agree. Mine was not a piggyback. I lived that shit. I was there.
And see, that's the thing. Because even, I'm not going to say her name, but a family member of mine, she lives in her house, not going to say the location, not going to say anything. But she's shared stories of the house that she lives in with her daughter. And she had ghost hunters come into the house, and they talked about 3 entities in the house. And it's gotten to the point where if she says, move the ceiling fan, it'll start moving. My little cousin, her daughter, has experienced situations where she'd be sitting on the couch and a scrape would show up across her leg. So, and see, that's the thing. Like,
your family's haunted, dog. I'm sorry.
That's what my wife says.
You guys are haunted. I'm sorry. I gotta go. I gotta go. I
But
I
see,
got
like,
people I gotta worry about too. I can't.
but see that's a thing though. It's like it's the whole premise, the whole concept of um biblical speaking is the fact that the closer you are to God is how you experience more and more of this. The farther away you are from God, the more and more you are experiencing this. So, like, of course, the Ouija board, do that stuff, do occult things, that kind of thing.
Mhm,
But if you're in the middle, you don't really experience it that often. It's
mhm.
either one extreme or the other. So it's really weird, especially like with these stories, because, and like, I love to share stories as well when it comes to this, but it just paints a different level to where, you could tell your dreaming story and
Mhm.
then I get goosebumps. I get like a scary feeling because it's an actual legitimate story and it's happened. So that's kind of why thought of the concept, thought of the idea of telling the stories. And, if we do this next year, if we're still a thing, of course, love to hear other stories. But, what did you guys think? Did you like the segment? What you guys think of the stories? We'd love to listen to your stories too. And with that in mind, we'll go ahead and continue the program and get out of scary memories and goosebumps and go into the top scariest movies of all time. All right. And so, with that, of course, we are going to go over the top scariest movies. This information was found on RottenTomatoes.com. Some of the honorable mentions is, of course, the leading soundtrack from our last week's episode is Halloween, The Ring. Don't know how that's scary, but whatever. Insidious, Sinister, and It.
It isn't scary either. I find it more humorous. It's I like the story.
I mean,
What?
the remake though. The remake does have its scary elements.
I guess I laughed a lot through. I liked it. Don't get me wrong. I just didn't find it scary. Insidious though, sinister, pretty creepy.
Yeah, it is pretty creepy.
Pretty creepy.
So number one comes with no surprise at all, especially the long running that it's been going, is The Exorcist, which first, of course, came out in 1973. It did score an 8.3 out of 10 on in IMDb. It was distributed by Warner Brothers. If you don't know what it is about a teenage girl who is possessed by a mysterious entity. Her mother seeks the help of two priests to save her daughter. It was actually based on a novel. If you don't know, it was based on a novel by William Peter Blatty's. Blatty's, I believe it is, which was inspired by the actual 1949 exorcism of a young boy named from Cottage City, Maryland, and 1634 Loudun exorcisms. The boy's name for years was Roland Doe, but later identified as Ronald Edwin. Hunkler, that's Hunkeler, who ended working and retiring from Nassau. The movie was directed by William Frid. Okay, can you help me out here?
I would say Friedkin.
Friedkin?
Yeah.
William Friedkin, who also directed
Friedkin.
Friedkin.
It might be Friedkin.
Who actually directed some of the other movies that's been on the show, such as The French Connection, and To Life and Die, To Live and Die in LA. The writer was William Peter Blatty. It starred Ellen Burstyn as Christ McNeil, Max von Sydow as Father Lancaster, Marin, Linda Blair, which is a famous name. Of course, she did a lot of movies after this as Reagan McNeil, Lee Cobb as Lieutenant William Kinderman, Kitty Wynn as Sharon, Jack McGorwin as Burke Dennings, Jason Miller as Father Damien Chorus, and William O'Malley as Father Dyer. It was highest grossing Warner Brothers film of all time, then adjusted to inflation, the highest rated R film when adjusted as well. Wow. Upon its initial theatrical release, the film affected many audiences so strongly that at many theaters, paramedics actually were called to treat people who fainted and others who went into hysterics, which is actually true. You can look up on YouTube and see some of the news and videos of the people doing interviews, and they will admit to doing that. Christian evangelist Billy Graham claimed an actual demon was living in the celluloid reels of this movie. And then police in Washington, D.C. threatened to arrest anyone who sold a ticket to The Exorcist to any non-adults.
First of all, Billy Graham, shut up. That guy. Sorry if we have any Billy Graham fans out there. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, if you think of like the conspiracy tropes, the same thing goes for the music industry, where they apparently the conspiracy is that the higher ups have a separate room to take the master version of the audio or of the record and basically do a ritual with it. So whoever listens to it, you know, that whole thing, because biblical sense, Lucifer is actually the angel of music before he was casted. So that's why. So that I can honestly see somebody saying, especially if you watch Fight Club. And if you know anything about Fight Club, they put stuff in between, like a split of a second.
Yeah. Like anatomy items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is with The Exorcist, from I believe to this date, it is still not the actual theatrical release, if I'm not mistaken. So when it first came out on like VHS, I believe it was an edited version from the one that was actually released in theaters.
Okay.
I believe that's how the story goes. That even to this day, the movie that individuals saw in the theater is not the movie that is actually being sold today.
Well, that's a ripoff.
Depending on, I believe, depending on how it was cut or scenes that were not included, something of that nature. Yeah. So it's funny because this film, though it was the scariest and it has been the scariest of all time, it does have some mystery between it too.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. I never found it to be that scary, personally.
No, in today's standard, I would say
yeah. The thing is though, 1973, and being how deeply rooted it is with possession and demons and stuff like that, I could see the hysterics. I could see people losing their minds over something like this. 100%. Honestly, my favorite part about the Exorcist is actually from Scary Movie 2, when they have the Exorcist scenes. That's one of my favorite scenes of any movie ever.
Yep, I remember that.
So
puking.
Yeah, and what it had James Woods as the father.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was pretty hilarious. I mean, it's a. I mean, I could see at the time. I don't know why. I don't think it still holds. I don't think it still holds as the scariest movie of all time. I don't. Maybe. I think it's holding on to what it is. You know.
Yeah. Maybe if you watch it before you watch anything nowadays, like The Conjuring or like The Haunting in Connecticut, like if that is your first introduction to paranormal exorcism movies, I can see that being scary.
Sure.
But if you, I believe my first introduction to paranormal movies was, I believe, Paranormal Activity.
Mine too. And
so,
I love those movies.
And like going from Paranormal Activity to The Exorcist, and of course being, I guess, numb to a lot of things too, like The Conjuring, because of The Conjuring, because a lot of those movies, like you go back to The Exorcist and it's not actually that scary, like you're saying.
Yeah, just, and I think it's hard to get involved also because of, the theatrics and the way things have changed in movies and the realism of what these new horror movies look like nowadays compared to The Exorcist. It's kind of like it's almost corny, almost. It's almost just a little too much. But back then, yeah, I get it. I see why. And I guess just because it was the king, maybe it should just stay on top,
Yeah.
and I understand that.
And the other thing too is if you actually do research as far as watch documentaries and stuff on there, apparently the story goes is the actual individual William Peter, right, is what I believe. No, he was the
Roland,
Ronald Edwin Hunkler.
yeah.
As the story goes, he was actually not exercised at the house because he was exercised at an actual hospital church location, if I'm not mistaken. Which that building has been torn down. But from my understanding is that during, of course, that process, what ended up happening is when he was freed, two things that's been said. One, it then entered one of the priests, and the priest stayed in that room until he died. Okay. And after that, nobody entered the room after taking away his body. And since then, you could hear stuff in the room, things getting thrown around. So there's that story, or the fact that once the kid was freed, same thing, just without the priest being in there. It's just hearing noises, hearing screams from the room as well.
Because there was no vessel and it was just there. Yeah, right. I gotcha.
So,
ooh. Yeah.
Ooh. Right? See, aren't you glad that you hopped on the Halloween episode with me?
No, anymore. I was. No, I'm not.
So number 2 comes with Hereditary. It was released in 2018, scored 7.3 out of 10. Actually, from one of my favorite distributors and film businesses, A24. It's basically about a grieving family that's haunted by a tragic and disturbing occurrences. The writer and directed was Ari Aster, who's also done Midsummer. If you haven't seen that movie, recommend it. It does give out that creepy vibe as well. It did star Toni Collette as Annie, Millie Shapiro as Charlie, Gabriel Byrne as Steve, and Alex Wolff as Peter, which Alex Wolff has done many of the films nowadays. Alex Wolff stated that the original cut of the film could have easily been 3 hours. Ari Aster wrote detailed biographies and backstories for all of the characters before even writing the screenplay.
Oh, so it's an original.
Yep. As well as the shooting took only 32 days, which I applaud Ari Aster to that, because the thing is it's one thing to write a book or have a story about a character, and then building upon that character as the story progresses, you learn more, and it's kind of leading the author as well to figure out who that character is and dive in. So I give Ari credit only because of the fact that, he had a specific way he looked at each and every character where, this is that backstory. This happens here. This happens there. This is their biography. This is their family lineage. So when it comes to the point of character development and where writers and where artists come into play and say, that's my baby, I built them from ground up. This is literally Ari's family. Like, these are his babies.
It's his swan song.
In a way, kind of, yeah. It's a beginning swan song because he just has so much into detail with these characters. He already knew what they would have acted. He already knew exactly, what it was about. And if I'm not mistaken, so it was this one. When I was doing research, it was Toni Collette stated that when she showed up on the scenes or for the filming and stuff, she was so impressed by his directing to the point where he already knew where everybody was going to be placed. He already knew the camera shots, the camera angles. He knew what he wanted to capture, and everything that was filmed went as quickly as possible because he had the concepts already written down in his mind, because he's already did it within 2 years ago of making the film.
Wow.
So the dude knew what he wanted to do.
It's crazy. And honestly, I'm very surprised to see a movie that was made a little over 3 years ago, 4 years ago, on this list as a number two.
Yeah.
That's very surprising to me. And I've never heard of it. That's another thing. Never heard of it, but I will be watching it probably tonight. So I'm excited. Hereditary.
Now
I
it
got
is one
I
of
got
those
one of
movies
those.
though that
Mhm.
some people like and some people don't.
Okay.
So I don't want to give your hopes up too much just because of the fact that, it is definitely one of those movies where some people like, some people don't like, some people thought it was scary, some people didn't think it was scary. So
I'll
just
probably think it's scary. I'll probably like it. If this guy was into it, the way he directed it and wrote it and everything, the way you say, I'm going to like the style. I already know that. I'm
it's
going to be into it.
see, the one thing I like about Ari Aster's directing and writing is one thing that not a lot of people like, and that's artist or artistic horror, where there's
Mhm.
a lot of artistry in it. Because Midsummer is exactly that. It's an artistry horror film. It's an artist horror film.
And I'm totally fine with that. I like that kind of stuff.
So I highly enjoyed it. I look forward to all the movies that he creates. But number 3 is actually coming. Probably the film that scared me so far the most in my life is The Conjuring, that came out in 2013, 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, distributed by Warner Brothers again. It's about paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren work to help a family terrorized by a dark presence in their farmhouse. Based on true story, though the facts are different than the movie, which is true. Director was James Wan, who's done, of course, the first Saw movie, Furious 7, Aquaman, Malignant, Insidious, Dead Silence. Writers was Chad Hayes and Carrie W. Hayes, both writers for Conjuring 2 and 3, as well as House of Wax. Starred Patrick Wilson as Ed Warren, Vera Farmiga as Lorraine Warren, Ron Livingston as Roger Perrin, Lily Taylor as Carolyn Perrin, Shanley Caswell as Andrea. Then you also have Haley McFarland as Nancy, Joey King as Christine, Mackenzie Foy as Sydney, Kyla Dever as April, Shannon Cook as Drew, John Brotherton as Brad, and Sterling Gerrans? Yeah, as Judy Warren. Because of the scare factor, it received a rated R rating, which is true. There's hardly any language to it, not barely anything as far as gore goes, or even blood in general. The reason why I got a rated R is because the scare factor.
It's just scary. It is just a scary movie.
Catholic priest had to bless viewers when this movie was being showed in the Philippines. Both Patrick and Vera visited the real Ed and Lorraine Warren prior to filming. When the real life parents visited the set in North Carolina, they felt a cool wind whip throughout the set. They also noticed that the intense sudden draft did not move nor shake any trees. When the Hayes brothers and Lorraine Warren would chat on the phone about the script, they kept getting cut off by weird sounds and a lot of static. Then out of nowhere, the line would suddenly go dead. Which, I mean, if you actually look into detail in the backstories of this, it's really creepy. I will say that I looked into the real story about, what this is based off of. And in all essence, 95% of it is Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
The actual story is the fact that Ed and Lorraine Warren did go to the farmhouse alongside, I believe, a priest. They tried to do a seance. What the hell am I saying? Seance. And the wife, so that would be, of course,
Lorraine.
Not Lorraine.
Oh, the wife of the
wife. Yeah. So that would have been where is it? Not Roger is the husband, so it would have been Carolyn. So Carolyn was actually thrown across the room. Basically, they thought that she was dead. Roger ran after her to make sure she was okay. Ed tried to stop him because he didn't know what was going on, didn't know if she was going to get tossed again, stuff like that. Roger ended up punching him in the face, told him to leave after the ambulance got there, and then, of course, they left. And that was the whole story of The Conjuring, the real life story. Now, later on, they did try to reconnect with, because they did feel bad. So they tried to connect with Carolyn, but Roger wasn't having it, obviously. And then later on, after they passed away, and when this movie was coming out, Lorraine Warren, last surviving in the Warrens when this movie came out, they saw some of the kids in the elevator during the showcase, and they talked. And of course, they made amends in a way that they did. But also they became really close because Lorraine would actually call the family every once in a while and see how they were doing.
That's awesome.
So
their story is very interesting to me. I want to read some of their books.
Yeah.
And some of the books written about them. They're very interesting couple.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
And the thing is like it brings a certain thing to what's Hollywood and what's real life too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because just like that, like 95% of the story was Hollywood, because Ed never did any sort of exorcism in his life, from my understanding. But the books are fascinating, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, that's The Conjuring.
That being said, though, Hollywood did a hell of a job with the story. Let's be honest, for being an A story, even though it's not The Conjuring. I mean, they made 3 movies and they were all good. So
yeah, exactly. So number 4 looks like The Shining, came out in 1980, scored 8.4 out of 10 by Warner Brothers. Family heads to an isolated hotel for the winter where a sinister presence influences the father into violence while his psychic son sees horrific foreboding from both past and future. It is based on a Stephen King book, which was inspired by real haunted hotel, the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, where Stephen King stayed in 1974. And if you look on their website, they will claim that they are a very haunted hotel. It is exactly in the location. So yeah, I mean, the history on the hotel is quite fascinating. Written and directed by Stanley Kubrick, who's also done 2001 Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, Full Metal Jacket, Eyes Wide Shut. And of course, he also directed the moon landing. If you guys don't get it, it is definitely one of those conspiracy theories out there that he did direct the moon landing, which no matter where you land on it, both have its credible, sides of each story, basically. It was co-written by Diane Johnson, starred Jack Nicholson as Jack Torrance, Shelley Duvall as Wendy Torrance, Danny Lloyd as Danny Torrance, Scatman Crothers as Dick Halloran, and Joe Turkel as Lloyd. Nicholson and Duvall have said that the film was one of the hardest of their careers. Nicholson considers Duvall's performance the most difficult role he's ever seen an actress take on. To get Jack Nicholson in the right agitated mood, he was fed only cheese sandwiches for 2 weeks, which he hates. Shelley Duvall suffered from nervous exhaustion throughout the filming, including physical illness and hair loss, which is absolutely true. Because if you look at the sequence where Jack is chasing her up the staircase and she has the, of course, axe, that took, I think, 190 some takes, I think, that they did, just that sequence, to the point where she was so emotionally exhausted that those tears were actual real tears. There's no acting in that.
This movie is interesting because there's a lot of things that came out of this movie. First of all, Stephen King hated the movie.
Yep.
I don't know if you knew that. Okay. Stephen King hated this movie. He said he just didn't like it. Next, Jack Nicholson. I knew about the cheese sandwiches. Also, before a riled up scene, this guy would start throwing shit around the studio. He would lurch around the studio like a maniac to get himself into the presence of playing his character. And in the end, Shelley, as the person, ended up actually being terrified of Jack in the end. And it had, I don't know what happened after that, but she was like psychotically terrified of Jack Nicholson because of what happened in this movie and how they portrayed everything in this movie.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, it was her last movie that she did too.
Yep, she didn't do anything more. She couldn't, I don't know what happened to her after this. Now that would be a good lookup.
From my understanding, is she did move on with her life and got and had kids and stuff.
Okay.
But as far as acting goes, from my understanding, she didn't want to touch acting ever again.
Her rest of her life talking to her kids. That fucking Jack Nicholson, just from here. Those cheese
Right?
sandwiches. Yeah.
But the last one, of course, comes from 1974, and that is the indie horror flick. Surprisingly, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Scored 7.4 out of 10. It was done by Bryanston Distributing. Basically, it's about 5 friends head out to rural Texas to visit the grave of a grandfather. On the way, they stumble across what appears to be a deserted house, only to discover something sinister within, something armed with a chainsaw. The movie was inspired by serial killer Ed Gein, whom kept skin from his victims and even made into lamps, belts, and more. He also was the inspiration behind Psycho and Silence of the Lambs. The writer and director was Tobe Hooper, who did the directorial for Poltergeist and TCM, Turner Classic Movies.
2.
So co-writer was Kim Henkel. Starred Marilyn Burns as Sally, Alan Danziger as Jerry, Paul Partain as Franklin, William Vale as Kirk, Terry McMinn as Pam, and Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface. Marilyn Burns, whose character was chased by Leatherface through the undergrowth. So my understanding is when she's running through the field, and I think what it looked to be like either poppies, I think it is, or hay or something like that, whatever, like growing wheat. So chased by Leatherface through the undergrowth, actually cut herself on the branches, so much so that it was her actual blood on the clothing and not fake blood.
Okay.
When it was first released, people were walking out of the theater sneak previews due to how scary it was. Entertainment Weekly voted this the second scariest film ever made behind The Exorcist during the time. It was the biggest grossing independent film until 1978's Halloween. Guillermo del Toro became a vegetarian after seeing this film. And one of the crew members, Dorothy Pearl, accidentally injected herself in the leg with formaldehyde while preparing one of the props.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So I've never seen this movie, and I don't know how I have never seen this movie. But Ed Gein is terrible. He's a terrifying person, like in real life. So I can only imagine how they portrayed him in this movie. And I did know it was, portrayed, about Ed Gein and his tropes through life, or whatever you want to call them. So I should probably watch this.
See, on top of this and the other movies that you're going to watch, the other movie too that I would recommend is going back to The Shining with Stanley Kubrick. If you haven't seen it yet, Eyes Wide Shut.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
You've seen it. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, it's a movie starring, of course, Tom Cruise,
Nicole Kidman,
exactly. And this movie, it's actually the last movie that Stanley Kubrick made, but also has a lot of conspiracy behind the film because of the fact that it, in a way, it is said that it pays tribute to the truth of what Hollywood really is and the secret societies within Hollywood. So much so that he actually had to cut a lot of this film out because someone told him that it was safe to do so, or this movie would never be released. And if you watch the movie, that's just scary on its own.
Fair enough. And to be honest, even when it come out and all of the things that are coming out of Hollywood the last 5 years, it's all starting to kind of make sense.
Yep.
It really is. So,
and perfect example of that is look at Amber Heard and her parties she had.
I wasn't invited, so it wasn't much of a party. So whatever.
But I mean, she would have individuals like Cara Delevingne was a popular one that went. A certain billionaire was also there, supposedly. So just a lot of weird stuff happens there. If you're part of the group, then it's yeah.
We don't get to sit at the cool kids table, Todd.
But yeah, that's if you haven't watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I would definitely recommend it. I would want to see the second one because from my understanding is it's supposedly better than the first one.
Okay.
I don't know, but
kind of like how the first Friday the 13th is actually really dull.
Yeah, because Friday the 13th, it's not Jason Voorhees, it's his mom. Jason Voorhees doesn't show up until the second film. And even then he doesn't don the hockey mask until the third film.
Yeah.
So
slow burn on that one.
Yeah, major slow burn. But yeah, other than that, of course, we did go out on social media and ask everybody's fan favorites. Now, I wish I was able to do research on this. However, I can guarantee you that this show is already close to an hour, if not already over an hour. So with that in mind, some of the fan favorites was Nightmare Before Christmas. That, of course, it was not directed or written by Tim Burton. That is a very famous in conception. It was only based on characters by Tim Burton. It was written and directed by somebody else, though the music is classic, as well as the actual singing voice of Jack is, help me out here, Danny Elfman. That's right. It's Danny Elfman actually singing Jack Skellington.
Danny Elfman. I love him.
Great.
I did not know that until just now, to be honest with you. I did not know that was Danny Elfman actually singing. That's crazy.
Of course, number 2 for the fan favorites is The Little Vampire, which the actor for that was the same kid actor from Stuart Little. The third one is Casper. And then the fourth one.
Great job, guys. Casper's fantastic. I'm sorry. I love that movie. I do.
And then the fourth one I've never heard of, but it's I believe it's an indie film. It's Satan's Little Helper.
I read it as Santa's Little Helper because I'm dyslexic and I thought about The Simpsons. That's how I went with that one.
I can see how you'd see it that way.
I did. I was like, Santa's Little Helper. What is that?
But that's it, guys. That brings the Halloween special to a close. Again, if you guys enjoy this one, let us know below and we'll probably do the Christmas one the same exact way. But other than that, what is your favorite scary movie? What is your favorite movie overall to watch during Halloween? Leave your comments below. Follow us on all social platforms. Hit the subscribe button. Share. And of course, we'll see you next time.
Bye. You should have told me. You should have told me before I met you, Todd. That should have been the same thing. Hey, man, that's a really sweet Dogma VHS you got there. Hey, man, I got a ghost that's following me. That's how this interaction should have happened. So that I had the opportunity to make my decision when I had the opportunity. You son of a bitch. You son of a bitch.
Well, I mean,
I broke bread with you, Todd, and you couldn't give me the pleasantry of letting me know, hey, just so you know, things might happen.
Well, I mean, at the same time, though, would you still became friends?
No, Todd, I wouldn't.
Exactly.
Yeah, you suckered me. You suckered me like a pro.
Why risk it? Okay,
that's fair.
Why risk it?
Fair enough. I forgive you.